OB39 or Open Beta 39 is finally here for Paladins, and it's called the Merrymaker patch. Basically, it's bringing a lot of Christmas skins and a bucket load of nerfs and buffs. And I have talked about the preview, what they said they were going to put into the game beforehand, but now we know that it's gone live, and some extra bits and bobs and characters that weren't talked about before that have seen some buffs and nerfs. And what I kind of wanted to talk about is the weirdness and the balancing sort of heavy-handedness that Hi-Rez are taking at the moment. So the first heavy-handed nerf is the Drogoz booster nerf. Basically, they made it so that there's a gradual speed reduction to the booster when surpassing the maximum intended speed. So basically, once you hit maximum velocity or maximum warp, it will start to slow down. And this has two effects. One, it makes Drogoz less effective in general, it gives them less movement, and obviously that's their intended nerf. But then the second, it makes Drogoz less fun. And I've talked about it before on characters, and why I kind of like Paladins so much is because there's a lot of movement abilities, and movement is such a big thing in the game. I've actually been playing a bit of Drogoz recently and really been getting into him, and the movement was one of the things that was definitely fun about him. And sometimes I feel when there's something in a game that everybody uses, everybody enjoys, and it's made its way into competitive play as well, then maybe that unintended thing should be integrated into the game and made more obvious to newer players who might not know how to boost him. But if they were overperforming, which I'm not entirely sure Drogoz is at the moment, and I'll talk about that in a second, but there were things on Drogoz that could have seen nerfs. For example, the Fire Spit combo with the Massive Explosion does a lot of damage at the moment that could have been slightly lowered, or maybe the knockback could have been decreased a little bit so it didn't knock so many people off the edge and things like that. Personally, the mobility wasn't the thing to nerf in this occasion. There's something else at the moment that makes AoE champions so powerful, and that's because there's so few of them. And the reason Drogoz can put out so much damage in games is often because he is either the only blast damage champion on his team, or one of two. And what will happen is the enemy team will pick Haven to counter the rest of their team and the main bulk of their main damage. And what it'll mean is that his damage will all get through unmitigated, whereas the rest of his team, who are all direct damage, will have their damage reduced. So it'll look on paper like the Drogoz has done amazingly, but the other players on his team had their damage mitigated. Personally, I think this is why Evie 2 has a lot of power in games, and why they probably looked at her and said, well, she's overperforming a little bit and we need to nerf her. But they too nerfed something that was rather fun in the game, reducing the Wormhole card. And if you didn't know, they reduced the Wormhole card, so basically it only does 1, 2, 3 or 4 seconds to basically gives you time to come back. And that means in most car builds that you'll only be able to get to the second level, which is 2 seconds, which personally, if you watch the footage now, because a lot of it is the Evie footage from the match, and obviously the Merrymaker staff, which is pretty damn cool with the gingerbread cookies, but that aside, but the character itself, with Wormhole nerfs, is in a bit of a weird place, because getting used to the 2-second cooldown is a bit frustrating. Sometimes you'll try and hit the button as you think you've got the 2 seconds and you won't go back. The lower the timer, the harder it is to use, and also the more frustrating it is. Wormhole really needs a UI counter saying how long you've got left so that you can know that you've actually made the mistake rather than just guessing, because at the moment it doesn't show anything whilst you've used the first blink and the cooldown isn't quite off. And like Drogoz, she might have been overperforming on paper in a lot of matches, but again, she might have been the only other character on the team alongside Drogoz that was the blast damage champion. So how do you fix these champions? Well, the answer is simply add more blast damage champions or AoE damage champions. Personally, I think Evie's Wormhole is such a big part of the build that it's so sad that it is actually a card and they've been able to nerf it so heavily. The other thing that I actually had been pondering as I played with the 2 seconds and realised that I was getting a bit frustrated, especially when I didn't know that the blink was going to go back, that actually the times that were fun were when I was blinking back. And do you know why that was fun? Is because the blink was instantaneous, unlike the first blink that you use basically has a delay before you use it, so often when you're fighting, that first blink isn't going to get you away. It's not going to escape you. Basically, the Saw's better because it acts instantly, whereas the blink, you're going to be in trouble. Somebody can kill you before you can blink away. I really don't know with Evie. Like, the Wormhole is such a big thing because it's one of the only cards that adds something, like a completely new ability to the character, because she's basically got 2 escapes with that. On the one hand, it's become such a big part of the play that in some ways it should be integrated, but in other ways, maybe the Wormhole itself just needs to go and maybe have the blink without that delay before it and make the blink itself a bit more powerful. One tip that I'll give at the moment with the 2-second one if you're going to use it is that before you go in, you really have to know what you're going in against because you haven't got long enough to get out again. So Normally when I use my Q, I'd just go up into the air, have a little look around, because I'd have 2 seconds probably to have a little look and gauge where people are, and then start firing. But now, you don't have that time to look around, you've just got to fire almost immediately, and to get 2 shots off, you need to get those 2 shots really quickly off. So you've got to know where everybody is beforehand. So maybe do a little bit of scouting from a higher position, or let your teammates scout them out for you, or something like that. But knowing where people are is really important now as Evie. Anyway, another character that got a shadow nerf, and actually Grok had an unintentionally high amount of healing when he used Healing Rain card, and that was actually brought up in the Reddit at the moment. Apparently it was bugged and was doing too much healing. I don't know whether it was at all levels or just the level 4, but it did make sense because in play, Grok seemed to be doing a little bit better because of how fast he'd heal people on his totem, but that also has gone away now. Personally, I don't think Grok's in a great place. It's just partly because he's still got a totem that can be destroyed, so his healing can completely be got rid of pretty easily, and especially by something like a Drogoz Fire Spit, which just knocks it down straight away. And also, there's only one of them, they're static, and you can't really use them for pushing. Like, it's really hard to use it away from the siege point, like the main point. Like I said before, maybe Grok needs 2 totems, or maybe one of the totems do something else, like a shield around the main totem, or like some sort of defensive damage totem sort of thing that spits out lightning, but he's just in a bit of a weak position at the moment. Kannathil is one that they tried to buff slightly by lowering the cooldown on the teleporter, which is a nice step in my opinion, but still isn't enough to make Kannathil viable in most scenarios. Like, the only time a Kannathil I would like to be picked on my team is if they were amazing, or like a main Kannathil, like they could do the damage and everything like that, but they're just so squishy to flankers and will probably be taken out and need babysitting otherwise. Really, the teletransporter could just go back to what it was like in the alpha version, where you could drop it down and then click a button to teleport to it just on the fly, or maybe just have it so that you could teleport faster, or maybe throw it faster by clicking. I don't know, some sort of mechanism that allows it to actually escape, because the delay at the moment whilst you're waiting for the teleporter to come up is too long to really save you from anything. So even though they've lowered the cooldown, it doesn't really do a lot. Ying's sort of a meh nerf, I don't think it really does a lot. Good Yings would have their illusions up all the time anyway, and then be throwing out the illusions to do burst damage when their cooldown was down to put up another illusion. So I've never needed to have an illusion up for ages, and I don't think that it'll have too much of an effect on live play, and I've seen some Yings in games and they've just performed fine so far. Same with Fernando, he's got a nerf, but it's just bringing him in line with the other tanks, and when I was in games with him today, it still seemed like he was performing fine. There's not really much of a difference, to be honest. Makaro, on the other hand, a good one, got a buff, giving an extra 50 damage to his cannon shots and to his anchor swing. This for me makes Makaro a bit more fun, in that once you grab somebody with your hook, you probably can get a kill with them because of the damage on your cannon now. The 50 damage doesn't sound a lot, but that's about the amount that would be reduced by Haven 1, which the enemy team would probably get anyway, so you're actually doing most of your damage in the early game. And that 50 damage starts to add up as Makaro is very active and you'll be firing that cannon all of the time, and close up and definitely getting hits. Unlike Grover, who's the 50 damage didn't really do a lot to, because you're out of the combat sometimes, and when you're in the combat you're throwing it quite slowly or you're healing. And I feel like it didn't really do a lot for him, but on Makaro it's definitely noticeable. And Makaro is definitely my favourite tank at the moment, and definitely fun to play, and I'd suggest playing him if you haven't, and maybe giving those hooks a go, because they're really fun. Madama got a slight health increase, it's an extra 150 health, it's because his Slither isn't the best mobility ability around, but yeah, he seems like in a good place as well at the moment. The two things that are really not balanced well at the moment, and have been out of whack for quite a while, are the Cauterize card and the Wrecker card, just because they give too much and grow too much during the game. So Cauterize doing 30, 60, 90% of reduction of all healing just pretty much kills healers towards the late game. Like, there's no point in even being there really. Like 10% of the health, like the heals aren't massive anyway, and reducing that by 90%, like they may as well not even be there. Like, if you see a comp with 2 healers in it, you're like, well, we've lost, because they're just going to get countered. And it probably will happen, because that's just how it is. The same with Wrecker, it's a bit too powerful against Ruckus, and also just gets rid of Fernando's shield straight away. And it should be something that's picked up by 1 or 2 people, and is used together to take down shields. But at the moment, even level 1 or 2, you're doing so much damage to shields, or to Ruckus' shield, which actually completely reduces his health and makes him rather underpowered as a character at the moment. it's just too strong and should be reduced on both counts. Both Cauterize and Wrecker need reining in, really. And also, the character that I would have thought would see some sort of change is Cassie, because she's definitely one of the higher performers at the moment, and it's because she's got amazing mobility, which I don't want to be nerfed because I love mobility. She's got high damage, she's got crits every time she rolls, her cards mean that her rolls come off cooldown straight away, and she gets some lifesteal on those as well, doesn't have drop off on her attacks, and each one does 700 damage, and also that's every 0.75 seconds, so she's putting out loads of damage, more than Charlene. Personally, like, they need to look at the damage profile, maybe having some drop off, maybe reducing those crits when you roll, something like that, but she is definitely one of the ones that is in the more powerful bracket at the moment. Anyway, I don't think all of the balances mean that the game's unplayable or that it's a wreck at the moment. It's definitely still fun. All I'm saying is I'm a bit confused by some of the balancing choices and some of the choices that maybe make the characters less fun to play, in my opinion. What do you all think anyway? Maybe you think that these changes have all been good, or maybe you like some of them. Be sure to let me know in the comment section below if you like them, if you dislike them, if you'd have done something differently, what would you've done to balance these characters out. Anyway, if you didn't know, the last video basically said my computer had broken down, and luckily I did have an old cooler in storage that I found and was able to dig out and prop in, and the first package from Amazon came today, which was basically the alcohol rub to get the thermal grease off, so I'm up and running again, so woohoo! If we're going to go by the in-game emotes, and I'm a happy clappy chappy. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that like button. If you didn't like it, give it a dislike. Subscribe for more of my content, and thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you next time, everybody. Joshino. Also worth mentioning, there's going to be a competition in the comment section below, well, a link to it anyway. I do them on Gleam now because it's just so easy to use, and you click a button and it picks a winner for you. So if you want to enter, be sure to head down into the comment section. And also, check out my last video about getting all the footage together, because I'm going to be giving away some skins to the winners. Anyway, until next time, everybody, Joshino.